I was going through the bottom drawer of the old dresser in my bedroom one ordinary Thursday afternoon when my hand closed around a faded manila envelope I had completely forgotten existed. The paper felt brittle, the edges curled from years of being pushed to the back. I almost set it aside, but something made me open it right there on the floor of my small house, just outside Norfolk, Virginia. Inside were pages of handwritten notes and a couple of old printed emails. The handwriting belonged to Linda Foster, my mother's best friend, since before I was born. The notes talked about family plans for the annual beach week at the cottage, about who really needed to be included and who could be gently left out this year, because she always makes things complicated. One line stood out like it had been written in bright ink just for me. Emily will understand. She's always been the independent one. She doesn't need the same kind of support Nathan does. My name is Emily Harper, and I am 27 years old. For as long as I can remember, I told myself the story that my family was simply close in their own way, that my mother loved me even if she showed it differently, that Linda was just an extra aunt who sometimes took up more space than she should. Finding those pages made the story I had been telling myself feel like something I had made up to survive. If you have ever found proof that the people you trusted most had been quietly rewriting your place in the family without you knowing, then you already understand the way my chest felt tight and my hands started to shake. I sat there on the carpet for a long time, reading the same lines over and over, feeling something cold and heavy settle in my stomach. The notes were from 3 years ago, but the feeling they described was older than that. It was the same feeling I got every time I was told at the last minute that the holiday dinner had been moved, or that the beach week guest list had already been finalized without me. I had spent the last 2 years quietly saving every extra dollar from my freelance graphic design work. $35,000 sat in a separate account I had labeled in my own mind as my fresh start. It was supposed to help me finally turn the spare bedroom into a real studio and take on bigger clients so I could stop taking every small job that came my way. I had not posted about it anywhere. I had not told anyone. But somehow my mother still found out. The phone rang while I was still holding the envelope. It was her. "Emily, honey, I need you to come by the house this evening," my mother said, her voice warm in the way it always was when she wanted something. "Your brother is going through a rough patch with that little business of his, and we need to talk about how the family is going to support him. Linda is already here, and she agrees this is something we should handle together." I looked down at the pages in my lap. The same Linda who had written that I did not need the same support as my brother. "I have a client call at 6, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Can we talk tomorrow instead?" There was a short pause. Then her tone shifted, the warmth thinning out. "This is more important than a client call, Emily. Family comes first. You know that. Linda and I have already started making a plan, and we really need you to be part of it. Your brother is counting on all of us." I felt the familiar pull in my chest, the old instinct to smooth things over so no one would be upset with me. But the envelope was still in my hand. "What kind of plan?" I asked. My mother sighed like I was being difficult on purpose. "We need to pull together some money to help him get through this legal situation. It is not a huge amount, but it has to happen quickly. Linda thinks if we all contribute what we can keep this from getting any worse. You have been doing well with your little design jobs. I know you have some savings set aside." The way she said, "little design jobs," made something sharp twist inside me. I had told her months ago that I was building towards something bigger, that the savings were for my own business. She had smiled and changed the subject. "I cannot just hand over my savings," I said quietly. "That money is for my studio. I have been planning this for 2 years." Another pause. This time her voice cooled further. "Emily, this is not the time to be selfish. Your brother has a family to think about. Sophie is only 5. Do you really want her to suffer because you are protecting a little nest egg?" "Linda and I have already talked about this at length." We both feel strongly that family helps family when it matters. Linda's name kept coming up like a second voice in the room, even though she was not on the call. The woman who had written that I did not need the same support. The woman who had helped decide year after year which family moments I was invited to and which ones I was not. I thought about the envelope again. About every holiday dinner where I arrived to find the seating already arranged, so I was at the far end of the table. About the beach weeks I was told about after the fact because it happened so fast. About the way my mother and Linda would exchange looks when I tried to speak up about how left out I felt. "I need to think about it," I said. My mother's laugh was short and tight. "There is nothing to think about. We are meeting at the cottage this weekend for the gathering like we always do. You will bring what you can and we will figure out the rest together. Linda is expecting you to do the right thing. Do not make this harder than it has to be." She hung up before I could answer. I sat on the floor with the envelope in my lap for a long time after the call ended. The house was quiet except for the sound of the neighbor's dog barking somewhere down the street. Outside my window, the late afternoon light was turning everything soft and golden, the way it always did in this part of Virginia. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like the ground under my life had shifted, and I was still trying to find my balance. I thought about calling my sister-in-law, Rebecca Nathan's wife. She had always been kind to me in the quiet way that did not draw attention. But I did not know yet what I would say. The notes in the envelope felt too raw, too private, like something I was not supposed to have seen. Later that evening, I drove the short distance to my mother's house anyway. I told myself I was going to try to talk to her one more time to explain why I could not give her the money. The envelope was in my bag. I had not decided if I was going to show it to her. When I pulled into the driveway, Linda's car was already there. I sat in my own car for a minute, watching the warm light glowing from the living room windows. Through the glass, I could see the two of them sitting at the kitchen table, heads close together, talking. They looked comfortable. They looked like they belonged in the same story. I got out of the car and walked toward the house, the envelope heavy in my bag. My hands felt cold even though the evening air was mild. I did not know yet what I was going to say when I walked through that door. I only knew that something inside me had already started to change the moment I found those pages. The woman who used to smooth everything over, who used to swallow the hurt so the family could stay comfortable, felt like someone I was finally ready to stop being. I took a deep breath, slipped the envelope into my bag, and walked up the steps to my mother's front door. The porch light was already on, even though the sky was still holding on to the last of the daylight. Through the window, I could see Linda sitting at the kitchen table, with a cup of coffee in front of her, nodding along to whatever my mother was saying. They both looked up when I knocked. My mother opened the door with that familiar half-smile she used when she was already preparing her argument. "Emily, come in. We were just talking about how we can make this easier for everyone." Linda stood up and gave me a quick hug, the kind that felt more like a performance than anything warm. "Sweetheart, you look tired. Sit down. Your mother made tea." I stayed standing near the doorway. The house smelled like the same lemon cleaner she had used for years, the same scent that used to mean safety when I was little. Now it just made the air feel heavier. "I found some old notes today," I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. "From you, Linda, to my mother. They were in an envelope in my dresser. They talked about the beach weeks and the holidays, and how I could be left out because I was too independent." The room went quiet for a second. Linda's smile stayed in place, but it tightened at the edges. My mother's expression shifted into something I recognized too well, the look she got when she was about to tell me I was overreacting. "Emily, those were private conversations between friends," my mother said, her voice soft, but already carrying that familiar edge of disappointment. "You should not have been reading them. It is not kind to go digging through old things and then throw them in our faces when we are trying to help your brother." Linda set her coffee cup down carefully. "Honey, sometimes families have to make hard choices about who can handle what. You have always been so focused on your work. We just did not want to burden you with every little detail. Nathan has a wife and a little girl. He needs more right now. That is all it was. I felt the old familiar sting behind my eyes, the one that came every time they explained away how I had been left out of things. The Thanksgiving when the table was already set for 12, and I was told they thought I was working late. The summer weekend at the cottage, when the group photo was taken without me because someone forgot to text. The way Linda would always say, "Oh, Emily is probably busy with her designs," like it was a gentle excuse instead of a way to erase me. "It was not just about burdening me," I said. My voice came out quieter than I wanted, but I kept going. It was about deciding I did not belong in the same way, year after year. "And now you want me to give you the money I saved for my own studio? So Nathan can fix whatever mess he is in." My mother's face hardened. She crossed her arms the way she did when she was finished listening. "This is exactly what we were worried about. You are making this about yourself again. Your brother is facing serious legal trouble with the IRS over some paperwork from his business. If we do not get him some help quickly, it could get much worse. Linda and I have already talked to him. He is scared, Emily. And you are sitting here talking about a studio like that matters more than family." Linda nodded, her voice turning sympathetic in that practiced way. "We are not asking you to empty your account, just what you can spare. $35,000 would go a long way towards settling the penalties and keeping this from turning into something federal and public. Your mother has already contributed what she could. I have too. We are just asking you to do your part." I looked at both of them standing there together, united in the same story they had always told. The story where I was the difficult one, the one who did not understand priorities, the one who needed to be managed. The family myth that said we were all in this together, while quietly deciding I was on the outside. "I cannot give you that money," I said. The words felt fragile when I spoke them out loud, but once they were in the air, they did not disappear. "That savings is for my business. It is the first thing I have built that is only mine. I am not going to hand it over because you and Linda decided Nathan needs it more." My mother's eyes narrowed. She took a step closer, and for a moment, the warm kitchen light made her look older and more tired than I had ever noticed before. "You are being selfish, Emily. After everything I have done for you, after all the years I supported your choices even when I did not agree with them. Linda has been like a second mother to you. And this is how you repay us when your brother needs help?" The mention of Linda being like a second mother landed like a slap I had been expecting, but still felt. I thought about every time Linda had spoken over me at family gatherings, every time she had redirected conversations away from anything I wanted to share. I thought about the notes in the envelope and how easily they had written me out of plans I had once believed included me. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed in my bag. I glanced at the screen. It was a text from my sister-in-law, Rebecca. "Are you at your mom's? Nathan just called me. He sounded off. Can we talk later tonight?" I did not reply yet. I looked back up at my mother and Linda. They were waiting for me to fold the way I always had. "I will come to the gathering at the cottage this weekend," I said finally. "But I am not promising the money. I need to understand exactly what Nathan is facing before I decide anything." My mother let out a short, frustrated breath. Linda reached over and patted her arm, like she was calming a child. "That is a start," Linda said, her voice smooth again. "We can talk more at the cottage. The fresh air will help everyone see things clearly." I turned to leave. My mother did not walk me to the door. Linda did, and as she held it open, she leaned in just enough to speak quietly. "Emily, your mother is under a lot of pressure. She does not need you making this harder. Think about what is best for the whole family, not just your studio dreams. Some things are more important than proving you can do everything alone." I did not answer. I walked back to my car with the envelope still in my bag, and the taste of old hurt thick in my throat. The suburban street was quiet, the kind of evening that usually felt peaceful here outside Norfolk. Tonight, it only made the ache inside me feel louder. When I got home, I sat on the edge of my bed and read Rebecca's text again. Then I typed a short reply asking if she could meet me for coffee in the morning before the weekend gathering. She answered almost immediately with a simple, "Yes, I think we need to talk." I put the phone down and looked at the envelope on my nightstand. The pages inside had already started to change something I could not name yet. It was not anger, not exactly. It was the slow, painful realization that the version of my family I had protected for so long had never really existed for me the way it existed for everyone else. Outside, a car drove past on the street. For a second, I thought I heard voices, but it was only the wind moving through the trees. I lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering how many more quiet exclusions I had accepted without ever saying the words out loud. The next morning, I met Rebecca at a small coffee shop near the water. She looked tired, the way she always did when Nathan's problems spilled over onto her. We sat at a corner table, and she told me what she knew about his business troubles, the unreported income, the IRS letters that had started arriving, the pressure my mother and Linda had been putting on both of them to keep it quiet. "He is scared," Rebecca said, stirring her coffee without drinking it. "But he is also letting them handle everything the way they always have. I do not know how much more of this I can watch without saying something." I almost told her about the envelope then. Instead, I asked her if she would stand with me if I refused to give the money at the cottage this weekend. She looked at me for a long moment before she nodded. "I have been watching how they treat you for years, Emily," she said quietly. "I just did not know how to say it without making everything worse. But I am tired of pretending it is normal." We sat there until our coffee got cold, two women who had both been carrying pieces of the same broken story. When we finally stood up to leave, Rebecca hugged me. It was the first real hug I had felt in a long time that did not come with conditions. As I drove home, I passed Amanda Torres, my neighbor walking her dog. She waved and called out something about the weather, but there was a concerned look on her face I could not quite read. I waved back and kept driving, not ready to explain anything to anyone else yet. That evening, my mother called again. Her voice was calmer this time, almost gentle. "Emily, I hope you have had time to think. Linda and I are heading to the cottage tomorrow to get everything ready for the gathering. We would really like you to come with the check or a transfer ready. It would mean so much to your brother, to all of us." I stood in my kitchen, holding the phone, looking out at the quiet street where I had built a life that felt smaller and more invisible every year. "I will be there," I said, "but I am not bringing any money." There was a long silence on the other end. Then my mother spoke again, and this time the gentleness was gone. "You are making a mistake you are going to regret," she said. "Linda and I have tried to be patient, but if you show up empty-handed, do not expect the rest of the family to understand why you chose to turn your back on us when we needed you most." She ended the call before I could answer. I set the phone down on the counter and felt something settle inside me that had been shifting ever since I opened that drawer. It was not peace yet. It was something sharper and quieter at the same time. I was done being the person they could count on to disappear when it was convenient. The cottage gathering was 2 days away. I had no idea what would happen when I walked in without the money they were expecting, but for the first time in a very long time, I was not afraid of finding out. 2 days later, I drove the familiar road toward the coastal cottage, where my family had gathered every summer for as long as I could remember. The air smelled like salt and warm grass. My hands stayed steady on the steering wheel, even though my chest felt tight. I had not brought any money. I had brought the envelope instead, tucked safely in my bag, along with the quiet resolve I had been building since the night I found those pages. When I arrived, the cottage was already full of voices and the smell of coffee and sunscreen. My sister-in-law Rebecca was on the porch, with my niece Sophie blowing bubbles that caught the sunlight. She gave me a small, knowing nod when our eyes met. My mother and Linda were inside at the big wooden table, heads close together again, the same way they had been at my mother's kitchen. They looked up when I walked in, And for the first time, I saw the calculation behind their smiles.
"Emily, you made it," my mother said, standing up and opening her arms like nothing had happened on the phone.
"We were just talking about how to handle everything smoothly this weekend. Come sit with us." Linda patted the chair beside her. "We saved you a spot. Family should stay close at times like this."
I stayed standing. The room felt smaller than it used to. Several other relatives were scattered around the living room and kitchen talking quietly, but the air had already shifted. They could feel something was different. "I am not here to sit and plan how to spend my savings," I said. My voice came out clearer than I expected. I came because I wanted to say this in person in front of everyone. I am not giving you $35,000. That money is for my business. It is not family money to be divided up whenever my brother has a problem. My mother's smile disappeared. Linda's hand froze halfway to her coffee cup. A few conversations in the room stopped. My mother lowered her voice, but it still carried. "Emily, this is not the place. We can talk privately later. You are embarrassing yourself." "I am not the one who has been rewriting who belongs in this family for years," I answered. I pulled the envelope from my bag and set it on the table between us. "I found these notes. They are from Linda to you, deciding which family moments I could be left out of because I was too independent. You both wrote me out of holidays and beach weeks like I was an inconvenience instead of your daughter." The room went completely still. My sister-in-law Rebecca stepped closer, one hand resting lightly on my shoulder. Linda tried to laugh, but the sound came out thin. "Those were just private thoughts between friends," Linda said quickly. "You are taking them out of context. We were trying to protect you from stress." My mother's face flushed. She reached for the envelope, but did not open it. "This is exactly the kind of dramatic reaction we were worried about. Your brother is in real trouble with the IRS. If we do not help him now, it could become a federal matter. And you are standing here, making everything about some old notes and your feelings." Before anyone could answer, my phone rang. The screen showed a number I did not recognize. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. "Emily Harper?" a calm voice asked. "This is Agent Sophia Ramirez, with the Internal Revenue Service Criminal Investigation Division. We have been looking into your brother Nathan Harper's business filings. Your name came up in some older documents as a possible co-signer on an account we are examining. I would like to speak with you when you have a moment." The room had gone so quiet I could hear the waves outside the open windows. My mother's eyes widened. Linda's mouth opened and closed without sound. I told the agent I would call her back that afternoon. When I hung up, I looked at my mother and Linda. "You told me it was just paperwork," I said. "You told me it was something we could fix quietly with family money. But it is already federal. And you wanted me to hand over my savings so you could keep hiding it." My mother tried to speak, but the words seemed to catch. Linda finally found her voice. "This is not fair," she said, her tone sharp now. "We have always tried to keep this family together. You have no idea how much pressure your mother has been under. If you would just stop making everything about yourself for once." My neighbor, Amanda Torres, who had driven up with her daughter for the day, because Sophie loved playing with her little girl, had been standing quietly near the porch door. She stepped forward then, her voice gentle but clear enough for everyone to hear. "I saw you both at Emily's house the other night," Amanda said, looking straight at my mother and Linda. "You were sitting in the car for a long time before you went inside, like you were practicing what to say. And I heard you, Linda, telling Emily's mother that if she pushed hard enough, Emily would give in because she hates conflict. I did not mean to listen, but the window was open. It did not sound like family helping family. It sounded like you were cornering her." The quiet that followed felt different from before. It was the sound of something breaking that had been held together with silence for too long. My mother looked smaller suddenly, standing in the middle of the cottage living room with everyone watching. Linda's confident posture had collapsed into something defensive and uncertain. My sister-in-law Rebecca spoke next, her voice steady. "I have watched this for years too. The way plans were made without Emily. The way she was told she was too busy or too sensitive. I stayed quiet because I thought it was not my place. But it is my place now. Emily is not the problem here. My mother sat down heavily in one of the wooden chairs. She did not cry or yell. She simply looked at the envelope on the table like it had weight she could no longer lift. Linda moved toward the door, murmuring something about needing air, but no one followed her. I stayed long enough to hold my niece Sophie when she ran over wanting a hug. I told Rebecca I would call her later. Then I walked out to my car with the envelope back in my bag. No one tried to stop me. The drive home felt longer than it should have, but the tightness in my chest had loosened into something closer to relief. In the weeks that followed, the federal investigation moved forward without my money. Nathan accepted a plea that kept him out of prison, but required restitution and community service. My mother and Linda stopped being the ones everyone called first when family decisions needed to be made. The invitations to the big gatherings became fewer and more polite. The carefully built myth that they were the heart of the family quietly unraveled, not with drama, but with the simple fact that people had finally seen the pattern. I used part of my savings to turn the spare room into a real studio. I took on bigger clients and stopped apologizing for protecting my time. Rebecca and Sophie came over often. We made new traditions that did not require anyone else's permission. Amanda became someone I could talk to without measuring every word. The quiet ally who had spoken up at the cottage never made a big show of it. She simply kept showing up as a neighbor who saw what was happening and chose not to look away. One evening, months later, I stood on my small back deck, watching the sky turn pink over the trees. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. It was short. She said she hoped I was doing well and that she missed me. I read it twice, then set the phone down without answering. The old pull to smooth everything over was still there, but it no longer controlled me. I had spent so many years trying to earn a place in a story that had already written me out. Now I was writing my own. The peace I felt was not loud or triumphant. It was the deep, steady quiet of someone who had finally stopped waiting for people to choose her. Boundaries are not walls I built to keep love out. They are doors I learned to close so I could open better ones. Real family never needs to erase you to feel whole. I chose myself, and in doing that, I found the people who chose me back without conditions. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever had to step away from the version of family you were told you had to accept, I hope you know you are allowed to build something truer. What would you have done if you found that envelope? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one.